Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Torn from Oblivion, where you can come for the cats and stay for the facts. Today, I'll be covering a topic that's intrigued me to no end, and if you're watching this, has probably been a question of yours as well. Does the Bible describe spiritual beings that fall outside of our normal angel or demon stereotypes? Stick around to have that question answered, and many more take its place. Today, we'll be looking back into the book of Jude, one of my favorite books of scripture, to discover more of the fascinating lore of the Christian Bible. Fair warning, some of what I'm about to say is speculative in nature, and if you've come to another conclusion, I'd love to hear the discussion in the comments. Fellow Bible lore lovers, enjoy. Likewise also, these filthy dreamers defile the flesh, despise dominion, and speak evil of dignities. Jude, verse 8. Like I mentioned in the opening hook, the Bible can be very ambiguous at times, and it's for that reason I've been captivated by the word dignities. For the longest time, I simply assumed, like many, that this simply referred to human government. Using synonyms in lists is common in the Bible after all, and the previous word dominion surely meant human government. That's how it's often used when referring to rulers anyway, and as a responsible interpreter, it's never a good idea to jump to wild spiritual conclusions just because it's more fun. And yes, it is more fun. However, the word for dominions, and I may mess this up, is kuriotes. So I decided to look up the meaning, and turns out it's an uncomfortably ambiguous word. In some places, like in 2 Peter chapter 2, it refers to human government. In others, like in 1 Corinthians 8:5, the meaning seems to be more spiritual in nature. Interesting. So on to dignities, which is the KJV English wording for the Greek doxas. This word literally means glorious ones and almost always refers to angels in the Bible. Far from being a synonym, this is a far more spiritual word. And the Bible usually doesn't refer to human rulers as glorious ones and rarely refers to them as angels. The only possible reference to that is preachers in Revelation, since the word angel in that context just means messenger. Even more surprising is the word for speak evil, which is literally the word for blasphemy. They aren't just spreading bad words or rumors, they're literally blaspheming something. So a quick study on the original words did nothing but whet my curiosity, as I hope it does yours. I started off as, just being interested in a word, glorious ones, that's something. But now, what are the dignities? What are these glorious ones? What does that mean? So are the dignities possibly angels? Or some nondescript good spirit of some kind? A well-established tactic of determining the meaning of words in lore, both biblical and otherwise, never mind that I learned this in the 3rd grade and it's elementary, is to look at the following paragraphs and see if they build on the concept. Luckily for us, Jude gives us a helpful hint. Yet Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring against him railing accusation, but said, "The Lord rebuke thee." Jude verse 9. And by helpful, I mean helpful for making many more questions. I'll leave the assumption of Moses aside for now, maybe another video, and get to my big question. Why is the example of how people are blaspheming glorious ones, whatever those are, about Michael not dissing Satan when they're fighting over the dead body of a prophet? Just, you see why I say this is the most Bible book of the Bible.
I have a question for God. Why? God! Just take me!
Complicating the situation of determining the nature of these beings even more is, as we've identified in our previous video, the blasphemers are corrupt preachers. It's not quite clear if they blaspheme because they're filthy dreamers, or they're filthy dreamers because they blaspheme. The context clue of Michael, who's always a good guy, with these apparently evil individuals is enlightening but spawns many, many more questions. As a quick aside, I am reminded of a verse in Revelation. "And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He was cast into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." It's not exactly relevant to the conversation, but I thought it was a neat note. It's not clear if this is meant to be a description of Satan's fall, or if this is still to happen in heaven in some future point in time. And I won't get to the implications of that. But here, Michael is simply saying, "The Lord rebuke you," instead of actively fighting him like in Revelation, where their two supernatural armies clash in an all-out war. Why is this picture in Revelation so different than Jude? I don't know. Maybe that's another video. Next question, why is Satan the example used? It's easy to see this as a literary tool used by Jude to show if an ultimate good guy won't even talk about the ultimate bad guy, then why should a bad guy talk about a good guy? That's an easy enough explanation, and I'm willing to believe is a perfectly valid one. But what if it's meant to show the difference in power scale instead? What if it's comparing the difference of Michael to humans in terms of power? Because that's astronomical. I guess it's unhelpful to dilly-dally too much in all these questions about this one particular example. You can see what I mean by it was helpful, but helpful in creating a lot of questions. So I will continue because we're still looking for the identity of the glorious ones. So far, what we know is they are glorious ones. They are mentioned separately than human government. They are being blasphemed by evil people, and they're spiritual in nature, although what kind is indeterminate. Not to say I've hit a dead end in working with our identity crisis here, but I think it's helpful to look at two other cases where the Bible wasn't very specific on the nature of spiritual beings, but provided us more context. And he said, "Hear thou therefore the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, Who shall persuade Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said, On this manner, and another said, On that manner. And there came forth a spirit, and stood before the Lord, and said, I will persuade him. And the Lord said unto him, Wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, Thou shalt persuade him, and prevail also. Go forth, and do so. Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these thy prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil concerning thee." 1 Kings 22:19-23. What? Without getting into the weeds here, whatever this is only described as a spirit. You could argue it might be an evil spirit, perhaps, but why is it offering help to God, and apparently in the heavenly council if it's so evil? It's doing God's bidding, so isn't that good? But it lies. You get what I mean. The word for spirit here is hurrah, which literally means get ready, spirit. Way to go, KJV interpreters. It refers to God's spirit, people's spirits. It's simply a disembodied will and intelligence. The word essentially plays off the idea of wind, which is an unseen force that moves things. The Bible gives no indication if it's good or evil. It just is. This is a lot like our glorious ones, in a way. No real indication of their nature beyond a simple adjective. For this one, it's lying. Although it seems fair to say that this creature isn't labeled as glorious, so it's not exactly the same thing, but it does help us understand that they're spirits that their role is a bit more ambiguous. Interrupt this video essay with a very important announcement. Colbert wishes that you would like and subscribe to Torn from Oblivion. You don't want to displease Colbert, do you? You don't know what happens to people who displease Colbert. Yeah. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Genesis 6:1-2. This is a hotly debated topic, so I won't make too much of a fuss over the Nephilim debate here, but I needed this as an example. Every normal indicator here is to refer to these as supernatural beings or spirits of some kind. You'll notice that it differentiates between them and the daughters of men, as if they're just two completely separate species. Whatever they were, apparently they had enough game to take whatever woman they wanted. I can relate to that. Yeah, sure. Anyway, are they angels? Demons? At this point, In a way, who knows? One could assume that they were fallen after the act, as this is a direct act of disobedience towards God, as evidenced by the punishment that came later. But what state were they in before that? That's really up for anyone to decide, I guess. In our second example here, we see that there are spirits that are capable of directly acting disobediently towards God, but at the same time, they're also described as sons of God. That's not a title I want to whisk away and say, well, any kind of spirit could technically be a son of God, whether they're angels or demons. No, these are specifically referred to as being mighty, and humans trusted them. When humans saw these things, they're like, well, yeah, baby. I'll let you fill in all the gaps of where that might go, because, there's obviously a whole other nature to this. But what's relevant to our discussion is that these aren't described specifically as good or bad, but they are described explicitly as being mighty creatures, being sons of God, being things that when humans see them, they're awestruck and are just willing to do anything that they tell them to do. So maybe those two examples aren't going to help us pinpoint our quarry, but they do help us get a broader context to how the Bible deals with spiritual creatures in general. In these cases, neither is referred to in a very reverent or deferring way. It's a very Bible way of putting it, where it seems like we're sort of expected to know that these things exist and stuff just happens, but here's a specific example. And that's a concept I'd like to target for our next example. Remember the first case of the lying spirit. No telling how often decisions like that are made in God's heavenly council. We only have that one example, and we only have a few other examples of the council in general, like in Job. The Bible forms patterns that are meant to show that there's an ongoing set of events that aren't important for us to know the details of, so little are given. These two examples help us to know that there's a pattern of things that aren't defined clearly as either angel or demon, but specifically are dealt with by certain identifiers. They're sons of God, or they're a particular kind of spirit. So what we're dealing with is also defined by a particular adjective or phrase, that being glorious ones. We can also establish through the context what they aren't. Based on context clues, they don't seem to be humans at all. And also, since Michael is used as a counterexample and is explicitly called an angel, it seems to be doubtful the high-ranking named angels in the Bible are what's being referred to. So we're looking for something glorious, or at least great in domain, that is spiritual in nature, but isn't what we've ruled out. This is where I would draw a blank if it hadn't been for one character in the Bible, the destroyer. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Let me just give this to you without the Bible revelation language. There's a race of locust people, or creatures, that live somewhere in the bottomless pit, wherever that might be. Not only are they extremely alien in nature, they have a king. His name, and forgive the pronunciation, is Apollyon, or Abaddon. They roughly mean the destroyer in their original languages. He's described as an angel, leaning him toward the good side. However, he seems kind of like he's been doing his own thing. He's literally a king of a whole separate race of locust men that live in some undisclosed dimension or location. Trust me, I'd love to dig more into that, but I don't feel like editing any more video. I'm going to stop myself there for just now. In my humble estimation, I think this is the closest thing we can find in the Bible to what Jude calls a glorious one. This is a high-ranking spiritual creature that performs an important task. He's at the rank one would say you could blaspheme if you talk bad against, and is unsuitable for someone, like a human, to be slandering. I will say I don't know anyone who slanders Abaddon, and I realize that is a serious plot hole if you just think that he alone would be the one that these people were talking against. But what I'm trying to go for is the theme and the idea that there are great creatures not really mentioned anywhere else, but have to exist. And since it's mentioned once, as we've already discussed, that clues us into there being a wider context of this sort of creature existing outside of the perception of people. Now, I also don't intend to try to make a religion out of this. If you start going around to people and say, hey, don't talk bad about the clouds, there could be some sky angel out there protecting the clouds and making sure that you think they're all pretty. You can do that, and please video yourself doing that, and I'd love to watch it, but please don't blame me, whatever you do. Broader takeaway for anyone, believer or not, interested in this or not, is defaulting more towards respect. It doesn't matter if there really are strange, weird creatures reigning over locust people, or how many lying spirits might be going out, or truthful spirits might be going out. That doesn't really change how we act towards each other and how we act towards those that are trying to help us. I think the main principle that could be taken, no matter how you feel about some of the more esoteric parts, is defaulting to being respectful of other people and their views, and then learning and being curious instead of outright just slandering. And of course, that's what our whole political system's on. That's what, a lot of even education is. Instead of curiosity, instead of being willing to say, hey, that's different, I don't really know about that, but I'm willing to talk about it, it's just an immediate slap in the face. And I think in a way, that's the underlying principle we can take. There are things that we don't know a whole lot about, but we can learn. And instead of attacking them or aggressively slandering them, maybe we should learn about them first before we open our big mouths and attack. In summary, we've gone back to Jude to discover more about what lies in the semi-opaque pages, or page, because, it's just one chapter. We've focused on determining the identity of the glorious ones, or dignities, described in Jude. We've looked through several biblical examples of strange entities and their possible help in determining the identity for its wording. There's so much more I would love to cover, but I don't have time or energy to go through the whole thing and make one big encyclopedia's worth of video on my random thoughts on this. I would absolutely love to hear what you think, and I thank you so much for your time. It does mean the world to me that other people would be interested in this kind of thing and hear me ramble on about it. I do appreciate it. Please tell me what you think. Thank you so much for watching, friends. Goodbye.